how Salesforce org, Salesforce metadata, Salesforce multi-tenant architecture is working. What does this multi-tenant term means exactly? If you have a logical mentality here, why? If you ask why questions and then get answers, so you may be more even focused and encouraged to learn those details. Right? What is the interaction between Apex and the server? How Apex is working? So behind the scene, behind the stage, under the hood, how the system is working, how those buttons and anything, right, that I called counter so far are working. Hello guys, greeting from Salesforce 101 channel. Today I would like to share the most exciting topic that I think learned or studied. It is Salesforce architecture and the basic questions indeed, like multi-tenant architecture and the communication between the client and server. What's going on behind the scene? I would say I was trying to understand and cover all the basics to get prepared for the interview, right, as a questions. And during those studies, I took, I think, really good and visualized codes, some notes. And in this meeting, I would like to just share this information. The reason that I am speaking not Turkish but English is not to limit the audience and open this source to everyone. Everyone can learn, watch, and share. I think that would be really beneficial for the newbies, I would say, specifically, or the people who would like to just extend their knowledge further and to get the understanding of basically how Salesforce org, Salesforce metadata, Salesforce multi-tenant architecture is working. So if you are ready, let's get started. Lastly, I bought this Excali Draw, this website. I really like it. I think it is more specifically for architects. It is easier to design something, use here many resources and insert libraries and use them. And it is also easy to take note. I really enjoy it and it motivates me to work more and in a detailed way, in a visualized way. So first of all, when we talk about Salesforce, right, we may say that, okay, it is CRM platform. Most probably we have seen this term, it is multi-tenant, right? There is multi-tenant architecture behind Salesforce. But when it comes to better understanding, okay, what does this multi-tenant term means exactly? Self-explanatory meaning it has. Yes, Salesforce is upon this multi-tenant architecture. So this arrow shows that, okay, it refers to shared resources. And what resources are those? Those are servers, processing power, database, and storage. Here at the bottom, if you look at it here, you see there is this building, right? There are those apartments here. When you consider all the building, right, as a Salesforce system, your org, your organization, and all the orgs, I would say, all the orgs created and referring to Salesforce org, is mainly those flats, those apartments. What are those possible resources can be shared between these apartments? You would say that, okay, that would be power, that would be water, right? Because if there's a limitation for the power and water, you may come across with a scenario that, okay, for some apartments, okay, those resources are limited for you, right? If you pay more, of course, you can use more, but still your limit and is this amount. Salesforce system works at the same way. Salesforce uses one common server, right? One common database as a resource. When you buy, you are granted one limit of a specific resource there. If you pay more, you get more. Thinking in this way, you may understand how Salesforce limits really important. And in terms of development, so the people who knows how to consider limits and then wisely design their system really gets benefit out of it. That's wisely programming, this clear code, clear architecture is coming to the stage. stage, I think it is more logical, right? And for me, it became like this because when you understand this multi-tenant architecture, and you may come across some question like, okay, there are Salesforce limits, Salesforce limitations. In many areas, you need to consider, for example, not SQL querying inside of a loop. Why? Because you may hit the limit. You may be like seeing those inputs, insights so far, but beforehand, if you think that, okay, I need to memorize them, I need to learn them because I may come across with those questions at the interviews. If you have this mindset, so you may not clearly understand what's going behind, right? If you have a logical mentality here, why? If you ask why questions and then get answers, so you may be more even focused and encouraged to learn those details. I think that would be easier. So like answering the first questions, I mean, I was trying to understand this Apex and then its basics. I asked this question, like what is the interaction between Apex and the server? How Apex is working? For example, in the Salesforce org, when you create and write one Apex code, or I will take one scenario of here, like having one org, and inside of it, right, this logical scenario in my mind. There is this org, and then users, there is business application, and inside of business application, there is this business logic. Okay, inside of the logic, there is this button, and button triggers the flow fires LWC invokes Apex calls like SQL, and then there's this DML. So there are many stages, but so behind the scene, behind the stage, under the hood, like how the system is working, how those like buttons and anything, right, that I called counters so far are working. I was trying to just answer this question. So the term that I came across while investigating is metadata. So it is a question from the interviews as well. Like if you understand really metadata, you may understand how the system is working at all. So mainly I took this pictures from the internet, and as you've seen, those joints are called metadata. And as an explanation, it says that metadata is data about data. So in the org, of course, it is customer relationship management system. You may have many data related to customers, right? It is understandable. But what is the blueprint that you store this real data? What is the blueprint? Or what is the schema that you put those data and in the system? Because you may enter one information to Salesforce org, but what is the meaning of like storing one information, and when you go and try to get the information, you can get it. Okay, where it is stored, how it is stored. Those are the questions that I asked. So mainly metadata is data about data. So the term, those metadata mainly means this configuration, customization, and code, and everything related to your org, which defines how objects behave, how org looks. Those are the parts of your Salesforce org. What are the parts of your Salesforce org? You can say that, okay, the parts are like would be custom objects, fields, workflows, Apex classes, Visual Force pages, right? These Lightning components and anything. So anything which makes the org, right? These compositions of the org is stored as a metadata in the Salesforce org. And the other question that I asked, guys, like related to this metadata, and I was asking, like, I was like reasoning this view, this picture. There is this developer user, right? And then there's end user in this part. So like when developer writes some Apex class or trigger, right? Upon the internet, of course, in the server, it is stored somewhere, right? And my question was, okay, there is this data storage, right? Normal database, but is it the same place where metadata is stored? So as an answer, I learned that, okay, it is different. It's not the same. There is this Salesforce metadata database, and also like for normal Salesforce database, You may know this database term from other languages as well, for example, Apex or other. If you .NET, if you use those systems, you may need one database. So what is the logic behind database? In the database, you have the tables regarding related to the application. You may have proper data modeling, right? And there is this entity relationship diagram, right, where your entities are stored, the relationship between them are stored, and afterwards you may have some terms there. For example, if you are working on this MySQL, or you may have some commands to the system, like insert in the blah 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 columns to this data. So according to this entity relationship diagram, you may insert data upon it. And by that way, you can create stored procedures. You can create some SQL queries upon it. You can insert something. You can like join something like different tables to get and acquire data. So in the Salesforce, you still have this one, which is data storage, right? And but besides, nearby to it, you have this Salesforce metadata database as well. I learned this, but the other question that I ask, like later, I will also I can come up with them. But there's this, of course, Apex compiler, right? There's this Apex runtime. When you click the button, so what starts on the server and working is this Salesforce runtime. I will also come here with a real like this, I would say, somehow schema that I show step by step how the system, for example, is working. So I will come this point, but still I have some other things to tell you. Mainly like for this metadata, if you go to your VS Code and retrieve the source from your org, right? The metadata of the flow, metadata of the layout, you may come across some view like this. Okay. For example, to start is starting this flow, and there the locations of any elements, right? And there, for example, if there is a logic there, if there is an operator there, if there is an element, anything can be placed and can be evaluated like those tags. So this is the way how on the visual part, since it is called low code high efficiency, right? There is this low code, and on the UI, when you make some changes, Salesforce automatically like creates metadata of what you have done there. So and if you want to retrieve it, you can retrieve this part. So like when you push this metadata that you retrieve from your org to another org, you may see the same flow there. So like you may understand the logic there, like behind it. So if you can make the changes on the UI and then retrieve it, or you can make the changes on the org, on the metadata. You can change something, and then when you push it, when you deploy it to your org, so you still see the same changes there. So those metadata that you retrieved can be stored in Salesforce metadata database. Like when you deploy your code, because source of truth is your VS Code, right in there. Your repository and is source of truth. Of course, behind the scene, like you may see here this Git logic, right? Version control system. It is different topic, but I will touch it like soon. But still there, you have this VS Code, and let's say that you have one branch which would be INT, right? Integration environment. So the code which go to integration environment can be inside of this integration branch. So you keep your source of truth code there. When you have it and then turn this one to the package, you have the all metadata related to your org. Easy to deployment. You have this package, so you may go to another environment, or when you deploy the recent changes to your org, to int org, so your code would be updated there, and your Salesforce systems and database related to your org, your in the apartment, in the building, your apartment, right? All the related information would be updated there as well. But behind the scene, how it is working, like what you have done is referred and then as some tags that system can understand. This is metadata. When I come here, I would like to briefly mention how the CI/CD working a bit. So when you have your code, your VS Code, right, and you make some changes. For example, you would like to change and add some field in the layout. Let's say that. Okay, version control system detects it, right, and if you are working on a feature branch and you wanna like create a PR pull request to your integration branch, right? Let's say that. So of course there should be one mechanism between it. Otherwise, everyone can directly push, right, their commit their changes directly to int branch, which will go if there is this CI/CD, right, this pipeline. And if you do not create this like checks, then you can't control your INT environment. You want to make sure that like the testers will test the integration, the new features that developers worked on. If you want to keep this one stable, like the features, okay, you need to create one mechanisms. So there will be certain rules. Each developer should create a feature branch, and there should be the naming convention there, and the pull request should be created from the feature branch back to this like INT, this main branch, okay, this development branch. So there, during that way, when you create this pipeline, when you create this PR pull request, so this pull request and the commit request to this main int right branch can trigger one pipeline. This pipeline could be Azure DevOps pipelines. Like here, there are some examples here, like Jenkins, GitLab, CI/CD, and each file and this pipeline can be developed, right, and stored in your repository. So for my example, in my company, we were using Azure DevOps pipelines. It is the YAML language, right? So like there, when you create this pull request, it fires one pipeline, and pipeline is basically automated steps, right? Some automation, some automated steps. That could be here, like there would be several here, some parts and stages. The first is source, retrieve the source code from version control systems and compile the code, generate artifacts. And later, like for this, for example, if you make, as I said, if you make a change in one Apex class, right, you added something there. And in the pipeline, so your changes are detected by Git, and like since there is this change, like there is this changes, and under which class it is changed. Okay, only Summit's, let's say, class is changed. So afterwards, according to the change, as an automation, you can like find the test class of my Apex class, and you can check the code coverage of it, and you can put a certain control system there. If the code coverage is not, after the changes, is not more than 75% or 90%, okay, provide an error in the pipeline, right? And which shows in the pull request part that like shows an error to this developer and telling, okay, you need to increase code coverage. Then you can once again commit the changes, which is triggering your pipeline. So all the automation and then certain steps, all the criteria, this PMD code analysis and anything like related to analysis and related to some rules that your customer and then your organization, your team would like to have, are mainly implemented in the pipeline. So as a last step, when this here artifact and when the package is created, so those package, even there would be a login system in the automation in the pipeline. In the pipeline, you can log into your org, and then there you can deploy the package created within the pipeline. So this can be deployed to the development, staging, production environments by this CI/CD mentality, this pipeline mentality. So under each here, like as you see here, under each stage, there will be some tasks and actions that you can develop, and you can go there and you can develop it. And because for the first 8 months, I was working in the DevOps team. Like we were doing this, and we were implementing, and we were trying to help the Salesforce developers, right, in this area, and like helping them. And because when they have some problems related to the pipeline, they were asking us to fix it, or anything related to this part. We were trying to improve like these pipeline stages, and according to the need of the developers as well. So we were working for the developers, but later I changed team to the full Salesforce development. After your changes are deployed to the org, one sip of Turkish tea would help here. When it is deployed to your org, right, and your org is, as I said, upon like all parts of your org are Salesforce metadata, which means that like when you have this code on VS Code, right, or all codes, all metadata, they are all together deployed to the environment, and which makes the environment all customization, configurations, code, and there. So like this is mainly this all there these configurations are stored in Salesforce metadata database. And as an explanation here, it says that this stores information about the configuration and customization of your Salesforce instance, which means your tenant, right? In multi-tenant environment, it includes metadata components such as custom objects, fields, workflows, Apex Plus, and more and more. So, but what about Salesforce storage database and inside of Salesforce? And it says that this is where your actual customer data resides. It includes records, fields, relationships, and other data related to your organization's business operations. After explaining you like this working system, I want to do one analysis, architectural analysis. Okay, here when let's say that from this scenario, when a user clicks a button, let's check like briefly how the system is working. Okay, when a user clicks a button, okay, and we have this browser is really important, because on the client side, browser is rendering. I will come to that term later, but we should understand this browser, this client-side rendering, and the server part. Okay, upon internet, let's say that we go to the server, and under it, the process, this long stick, right, is called, each step there is called runtime execution or metadata-driven execution process. Server is going there, like step by step. Okay, according to the need after this clarification, right? The first thing that like server gets metadata related to this button, right, from metadata database. It gets the metadata. Let's say it is flow structure, steps, and actions, and step by step it reads the metadata. Of course, it's compiled in the bytecode, right? If there's any other composition part, like the other anything, like it could be different information, metadata information referred under this flow metadata is also retrieved at that stage by server from the metadata database. Like for example, here get field configuration from metadata database, and also start reading it. So if later on, if the flow includes, let's say, LWC file, still what server do? Get LWC metadata from the metadata database. But here, as an explanation, this metadata includes information about LWC's HTML template, JavaScript controller, CSS styling, and any other resources required for rendering the component. So after getting this LWC metadata from the server, gets it from the metadata database, so it is time to, because it is server-side rendering, right? It Server sends this information back to the client-side UI as an HTML, CSS, and JS, right? So this browser executes, it is JavaScript controller logic, because it starts from reading JavaScript, because under JavaScript, you may know that there would be an Apex call, right? And Apex call is server as we know it. So from here, the call goes to the Apex call to the server. And if there is a Apex class, still it is metadata. Server asks this metadata from metadata database, gets it, and starts reading once again. If there is an SQL query there, let's say that. So what server does? Server at the moment reaches to data storage, right? Where I explained mainly here, data storage database. This is where your actual customer data resides, right? There is a real data there. So there's this SQL query to the data storage, and there's this return data, and the server also sends it back to the GS, right, which is on their client side. And on GS, of course, there's this, for example, there would be update of data table and render, and after updating the data table, there's this HTML, and browser renders this HTML part, and reading it is data there. So this rendered part is placing to the DOM, right, data object model, which is working, right, and on this browser. So afterwards, as a user, we see the changes as a data. I think my part is over right here. I hope I really enjoyed, I would say, while working and then explaining it to you. And I hope this would be really beneficial for you. And later, I will try to even like get deep in more about this heap and stack, right? And during the server, this runtime execution, what is the point of, let's say, heap, right? When because we know that in the Apex there are these assignments, those values, those data. Okay, where is that stored? Okay, on the runtime. So there are these terms like this heap and stack, and I am also searching and trying to understand them better. There you can also come across with these limitations as well. There's this like Apex heap exception, right? Storage exception, many things. So we need to consider, we need to understand, right, what's going on behind. But later on, we need to have this courage and even enlightenment to search more to improve ourselves. Why? Because if you think that okay, there is this limitation and we need to be wise. So we are not the first person who are considering this, right? These limitations. Beforehand, many, like hundreds and thousands of people are went through the same path, and there are some experience that they earned. What are those? Those are the principles, some coding principles, and some patterns, right? Design patterns. Those design patterns are some experiments that the developers went through and learned. They tried to implement one logic. They came across some problems many times, and they, out of it, right, they get one experiment from it. Okay, if you do this in that way, in that structure, so you may not see this error. It is the good way to create a clear and understandable structure for you. So like if you look at these design principles, design patterns from this view, so you may have this inner enlightenment, right, and gratitude, and even motivation to learn them more. Oh yeah, and I think it is end of the story. So I hope you really enjoyed it, and you may share your ideas, and you may share your evaluations and your assessments about this session, and I would be really happy about it to see them, to reread the comments, and hope to see you next time, and see you soon, guys. Take care.